We just wrapped up recording the podcast, but let's go check out SynkedUP in action on your desk. So this is the operation where all the magic happens. We got, a SynkedUP Yeti right on the desk here. We got a bid in real time taking place right there. And that right there is what it looks like when SynkedUP is making money for you. Welcome back to another episode of the Cost of Doing Business show. Today I am in the office of Joel Lattimer. Joel, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out. I was happy to hear that I was selected as an option for a podcast. Never been on one before, so.
Well, yeah. This is actually probably, I don't know, half the time that I do this. It's the first podcast for whoever we have on.
Yeah, it's
so
cool.
Welcome to the crowd.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor. Give
us a bit of an intro for everybody listening, like yourself, your brother. I know it's a bit of a family business.
Yes, so
you got multiple businesses.
Yep,
give us kind of a lay of the land.
Sure. So 2015, we incorporated the business. We were essentially just a DBA before that, doing business as Lattimer Landscaping. In 2015. We incorporated the business and essentially made it official. I went to school for business, graduated from University of Buffalo, and my brother, a couple years behind, graduated with civil engineering. And we kind of wanted to do something that we would kind of both excel in our strengths at, and he wanted to do, build sweet projects, and I pretty much wanted to continue to sell. So we developed Lattimer Outdoor Living, and we have essentially primarily focused on design build outdoor spaces for residential application. So we've done some really awesome projects. It's been quite a blessing. And in 2021, maybe 22, I guess I didn't prepare for the specific date, but we started Waterscapes of WNY doing essentially full service water features. So koi ponds, pondless waterfalls, fountainscapes, ponds. Obviously, we talked a little bit about our koi operation for adding those to our ponds and the spaces that we maintain and modify. That's kind of taken off in projects where we have the outdoor living, and then we have Will on our Waterscapes division kind of come in and do some pretty awesome water features as well.
So what was the strategy behind, those are two separate businesses,
correct?
Right? Yeah. What was the strategy behind that? What made you decide to do that?
May not have been the greatest in the beginning. The thought of it was, I don't want to be a threat to another company. For example, in an outdoor living world, a lot of companies do it alongside themselves. Like they do outdoor living work, patios, retaining walls, outdoor kitchens, fire features, whatever. And then they also do water features. My thought process was, that'd be a lot easier because then we don't have to rebrand, all the things. But it's somewhat of a threat potentially to a company like me that does it. So I'm not after that work. I'm only after the water features. So he's able to work along companies just like us and still do the water feature work and not feel like a threat. I would say it has, because now we're working alongside of other companies like us that do the work, and they don't see us as a threat because they don't directly know that we're correlated.
Interesting.
And it's not a manipulation by any means. It's more of a, I want the work that I'm after, and I want you to go after the work you're after, and be a benefit or a tag along to what they're doing, not so much as a, oh, that's Lattimer? Yeah, no, we don't want them because then they're going to take the other work. We make a very clear line of, that's your work, this is what we're pursuing work.
Yeah, no, I get it.
There's not a threat. And it has been quite involved and aggravating in a sense to get completely separate everything, but it's been really good as well, because it kind of makes a clear delineation.
I get it, because a good friend of mine, Jack Hardry from Atlantis Water Gardens in New Jersey, I don't know if you know that name.
Yep,
yeah, he's strictly water features. Yep. And that was one of the things that he really used to grow that business, was to go after other contractors that do all the outdoor living, all the other stuff, and develop relationships with them, where he just comes in behind them and does the water feature.
Yeah, and it's been real good, especially because then you're the expert. Will's an expert in the field, 100%. Yeah. He's been in the field for over 10 years doing water features. So he's the expert in the field.
So you hired him in?
And I hired him in.
Okay.
And then we're like, all right, it was the idea of starting doing it was a thought. We'll add it to what we do. But then it's like, if you add, the more you add to the list of things, the less specialized you are in that list of things. Not that this is the one thing that was not the main piece of advice in business, but one was, you really want to specialize. You don't want to do everything. You want to do what you do and do it well. If you do everything, you're not the guy. You're not going to be able to excel beyond whatever limit.
Yeah, I get it.
So because of that, it's allowed that business to essentially grow on its own and us to grow on our own, all the while growing together. But Also, specifically, obviously regarding SynkedUP, it was a division. We started out as running QuickBooks, running SynkedUP, like both, and it was like, this is a disaster. We got to have our own separate everything so that it's cleaner, more professional. So you got
two separate SynkedUP accounts.
Two separate everythings.
Separate QuickBooks and separate,
banks,
okay.
Everything's.
Interesting.
Which is better, especially when it comes to QuickBooks, because blending the line was not great.
Yeah.
But obviously it adds to the cost and all that, but it is what it is.
Sure.
I would say worth the additional cost to have the flexibility and growth potential.
Okay, it's good to know. Talk about the family aspect. Like, I know it's your brother's, your dad involved in the business?
Nope, he's not.
Okay.
He was actually an accountant my whole growing up.
Okay.
But he definitely taught us how to be aware of finances and save money, and to be proactive on how we spend, not to be just buying whatever we don't need, just to have it. But my brother and I essentially are 50-50 on both businesses and operate them. I'm sales, he's more operation in the field as like a project manager, superintendent role.
Do you guys have like an operating agreement amongst yourselves?
We do.
Yeah, smart. I didn't even know the answers, so I would have put you on the spot, I guess, if I'd made you say no.
Yeah.
But no, that's smart. If you're in partnership with a business, that's essential.
Yeah, obviously partnerships are hard, even harder than I think I anticipated or expected going in. But being that we're brothers, I think our key component is we're brothers, so we're able to work through a lot of our concerns and issues. Obviously, having my dad kind of talk through some of our blow-ups along the way has been helpful. Like, all right, you got to focus on your strengths and kind of how you guys can work together better, not be at each other constantly.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is obviously staying in your lane and having a plan, which oftentimes I don't have a great one. So
stay in your lane.
Right.
I joke. I keep sending that as a hashtag to my assistant once in a while. Like,
stay in your lane.
I have to stay in my lane.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your journey, starting your business, and was the beginning, were you running off of spreadsheets and that kind of thing?
So
how did you find SynkedUP?
Okay, I'll get you there in a second. So we started out back in the day, it was literally just spreadsheets and yellow legal pads to essentially get notes and plans and whatever. So we started out with that approach, and bidding was a very, learned, this is probably going to make sense. We'll look at how many hours I think it's going to take, times however much an hour. Okay, we'll have some trucks. Okay, I don't really know. We'll add $500 for like tools and stuff, and then material. Add it all up, sometimes round it up $50 or $100 or more if it seems cheap or something, and there you go. Profit margin was never really a determined item until the end of the year. You'd be like, oh cool, we made money or we didn't make money. Somehow, some way we did reasonably make money over the years, but then it's like you're not sure really what you're making when you're spending on the trucks and the assets and the whatever. So there was definitely a gray area. We started, I think the first time I heard about it was probably an ICPI class. We learned about it. And we tried, and I did not set it up properly. I liked the idea of a budget. I was like, budget, that'd be awesome. Like knowing what I have to do in revenue beyond just wanting to do $100,000 more every year, which was kind of like, if we do 100,000 more, we'll probably be fine. But never really having an actual plan. And as Luke says, you should think of it like a business. You think of it like a job, and that's really dumb. You need to think of it like a business. You went to business school, what are you doing? So Luke's been a bit more ahead of it than I have, but we more so use it for the budgeting aspect initially, never really on any kind of job costing or any kind of, not even sure that's available there, but never really on that side of it. More on the budget, like, hey, you got to have breakdown of your equipment and all that, that part of it. Didn't really use it, just did it once, kind of stayed up on it a little to kind of maintain it. Then we were at HNA 4 years ago, something along that line, and you had literally just gotten this off the ground. It was like your first
year. That was 2021.
So that was your first startup.
Yeah.
And Luke said, we should get that. And I was like, no, I don't know. It's a lot of money. I don't know. So we didn't. I regret that decision deeply, but it is what it is. I don't really know the next step. He'd probably remember better than me, but we decided to get it. He'd remember the details of what, but we got it, and it was like, oh yeah, this is sweet. And then we went to the contractor summit, not last year, but the year before. That was the first time I brought Will to any events. Right after that was like, all right, we got to get you one, because I'm utilizing, we talked about how SynkedUP is beneficial and all the things to kind of sell people that weren't on it at that summit, as well as to reinforce those that were. And when we were there, I was like, this is a sweet feature. Yeah, I did this. And he's like, man, it'd be sweet to have this. And I'm like, yeah, we should definitely do it. So then we added that for him at that summit. I believe the week after that summit, Fred set us up and got us situated with essentially 2 separate everythings.
So what I'd like to hear your thoughts on is like, when you got it, what was the thing that made you say, oh yeah, this is it? When you logged in, you were messing with it and it's getting started. Like, what made you feel that?
Honestly, well, like I said, from my spreadsheet or my legal pad example, you forget everything when you're writing an estimate. It's very hard to anticipate and think of every single item. Let's just ignore templates altogether. Assume they don't even exist. You can go down your sheet. You go down labor. You talk about material. You talk about your base stone. You talk about your finishings. You kind of work your way through the project in your mind, what's going to be needed. Cool, all that's great. That doesn't accomplish overhead. That doesn't accomplish profit. Those are 2 very large pieces that if you never accomplish, you're not bidding properly.
And the reason it's hard is because, yeah, sure, you and every other business in this area buys, say, the same product from the same vendors.
Right.
So that's the same.
Yeah.
And you probably all have a general rough goal of, 10, 20, whatever % net profit. Yeah. But the squishy part, the one that's like variable for every last one of you, is the overhead.
Yeah, so, overhead piece.
There's no way to anticipate. Even your own overhead changes on a monthly basis.
Exactly.
There is no easy way to just be like, oh, dude, I should get $85 an hour and like let's roll with that for the next 10 years. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And if you think about that piece even alone, talking about labor, it's like, oh, we'll just be some amount per hour times however many man hours. But even now, kind of learning through it is like, well, you can't just bid, oh, it's going to take me 6 man hours. Well, no, it's not. Set up, prep, drive to the job, drive back from the job, clean up. Okay, that has a value. Also, going to the material supplier and picking out your material. Yeah. I mean, I probably had most projects you've got
and suddenly a couple
15, 20 hours in time prior to even showing up there and all those things.
And suddenly a couple $100 delivery fee actually looks like it makes sense.
Oh yeah, which we do, thankfully. We do all the trucking and all that to our jobs because it's just logical.
Yeah.
Especially with the time. But so yeah, I would say that's been a big, just having the ability to have an item catalog. We're able to kind of push them all in. Having the templates is sweet too, but I don't even utilize those fully. But just being able to break down your items and then seeing, oh, cool, percentage X. Like, oh, wow, I'm doing this for free. What am I doing? Mm-hmm. You can actually decide if it's logical.
It's like, oh, yeah, no,
I'm not.
You do a bid and maybe, let's say it comes up to like, $27,000. And the client's like, I can't go over 22. Got to do it for 22.
For the fun of it. You're like, hey, what's 22
Okay, that's what 22. Oh, negative 1%? Yeah, no.
But you're just like, no, you're not.
Yeah. There's no longer this thing, oh, I should give you a deal.
I remember we did a cleanup for somebody back like super early on, and maybe when I was probably freshman year of college. I don't remember. I quoted them $1,800, which sounded like a lot. And they're like, oh, could you do it for $15? And I was like, yeah, okay. How about $1,550? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So we did it for $1,550. And now it's like, no, I would never. Those thoughts of, would you do it for that? No, I won't.
Yeah, the sooner you get to the point where your number is your number, it is what it is. There's no emotion.
Yeah.
If you want to negotiate, okay, fine. We're negotiating on scope.
That's the other thing I like about just bringing it to actually sending out the proposals, is which I write on all my contracts, but pricing based on projected scope of work, adjustments to scope of work will result in a change order or adjustment to scope, for which will change the price. But like, oh, can you do it for this? Well, we could probably change the price if we adjust the scope.
Yes.
So you have something that's set. That's my number. I'd love it to be different, but that's the number. If you'd like, we can go up. But that's my number. When they say, everyone does, not everybody, but a lot of people try to, what can we do? Or it's just more than they want to spend. Not even that they want to nickel and dime it, but they're just like, it's 50, I want it to be 30. Okay, well, based on the scope, that's not possible. We can manipulate the scope potentially in either scope of size or in material, or maybe phase it out accordingly and make it closer to that number. But it's going to result in some serious changes. Is that okay? Then you have that conversation. But I love that there's a disconnect between me across the table from you, handing it to you. I loved those sales, but I really appreciate having it sent out. Then it's a phone call, and you're able to kind of think through it a little differently than if you're face-to-face, not really sure how to respond. So that's kind of been beneficial.
Yeah, not being sure how to respond is that's a deadly thing.
It's it's also sales. You want to, right, and obviously the more sales training you have, the better your responses are, but sometimes it's hard when you want to work, you want to work alongside these people, especially you understand the spot they're in or the position they're in. You want to kind of work with that.
Yeah.
And have an answer.
Yeah. Part of the role of being a salesperson in a high-ticket industry like doing outdoor living spaces is educating the client as to what things cost. Like they don't know. Like
No,
they might
they
have a
don't know.
$20,000 budget and a $100,000 vision. Like
I think that's one thing I've learned. Obviously, I was telling you, I took that Josh Gillow class, and one thing that I learned is you're setting a precedent. So you kind of, have you thought about what that might cost? You ask them, and you kind of take their feedback, and that's something I've definitely done better at, is asking the right questions, not just, oh yeah, backyard, oh yeah, spa, pool, kitchen, oh yeah, nope, we can definitely do all that, and that's great, but having at least a conversation midway through that where you're not getting their hopes and your hopes up, really, of
all to be crashed.
right, like, do you have any idea what that might cost? And if they say 50 grand, you say, well, no. Actually, the fire pit's X, the kitchens, you can kind of work your way down the line and then say, based on what we've talked about today, we're somewhere around 200,000. And if they say, okay, sounds good, let's talk, you're in the great conversation. Or you need to tone your conversation back. And if they say the opposite, which is more than likely the case, they say, oh, I was thinking 100 or whatever, you're able to then transition that conversation wisely, not wait till the end and be really...
Yeah. And as you know, and really, it's like, okay, cool. Well, what is the awesomest thing I could do for 100 grand then?
Right.
Like,
then you're able to manipulate it or say, hey, we can do this in couple different ways. We could do this now and do this over
now that I know that I have the budget,
right.
you know, we could arrange the design this way, and basically you're working to maximize their impact off.
Right.
Every
And
dollar
obviously there's a level of absolutely a level of trust for sure, but it's also hey, I want to do what's best by this project.
Yeah.
But I also want to maximize what we're working with.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, obviously there's a trust factor because a lot of people, as
they think they're showing you their cards.
they say their budget, and that's the other reality through Josh Gillow's class. You kind of learn that's actually not the case.
No.
When they say it's X, it's usually some number either less than that, close to that, or even higher than that. Sometimes
it's not the end of the work.
It's not always
it's not the
there.
end of the discussion. Yeah.
Right.
And but the way to land this conversation, I think, is what you're not doing is negotiating with your own profit margin.
Correct.
Because
you see it, you're like, no, I'm not
if
playing
you're going to do
that
the work
game.
for free, you may as well go
No,
fishing
exactly.
or go hunting, like what you're
exactly.
doing. You know, changing gears a little bit. Like, what would you say has been the most difficult challenge you've overcome?
I would say I lost my grandpa in 2016 to a car accident, and I think back on like the relationships I have with people and business, non-business, and I think that was one of my hardest challenges. He was one of the reasons I wanted to work with my hands. He was a carpenter, so I wanted to be in that space, and just losing him in my life was one of the challenges, I think, that was one of the hardest.
How did that impact you as you in how you live your life today? Like, is there anything that experience shaped you that you're thankful for today? Or
I would say the work ethic, having a work ethic and knowing that work is work, family's always more important. That's one thing that specifically even me, my wife and I foster. So we have whatever God has for us at that time, but it's just a different journey, and it's an absolute blessing, but you got to be present. Work is not most important. So I think that's probably what I've learned or been taught the most through having that solid figure in my life. And then even now, it's knowing there are limits. You can't do everything. And it's taking time for those things. Obviously, knowing your numbers, knowing what works and doesn't is like, why am I doing these things that aren't profitable? So that's kind of been definitely something we've learned or grown from.
Because it doesn't.
What are we doing? This is
it doesn't
stupid.
just rob from you
it's
either.
Like, it takes your time. It takes your guys' time.
Yeah.
Whatever. If you can't do it, one of our sayings is, if you can't do it Monday through Friday, it's not worth doing. Of course, there's days where you work a little later, but no, we're not working weekend. We're not doing it. It's just not conducive to family or any kind of personal anything.
What would you say has been the best advice you've been given?
I would say be faithful in the small things, and God will be faithful in the big things. So how you run your business, do everything as unto the Lord, and work hard, and you'll never be without a job, and God will bless you in what you do. Not just monetarily, but just in your relationship with Him and the relationships you have with others. And I would say, not to bring it to spiritual, but if your mindset is, I can do this, it's gonna be fine, whatever, I can do what I can do, it's really self-focused and prideful. And the reality is there's really not much we do on our own at all. I mean, the reason we're in this place we're in our business and the relationships we have and the work we have has absolutely nothing to do with me. I always think about how fortunate I am to be able to walk and to be able to talk and to be able to communicate with others. If I didn't have even one of those things, everything would be different. And it could change tomorrow. So having the perspective that it's all temporary, but obviously do it the best you can with what you have at the time.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Exactly. If you're focused on getting big or whatever, it's like your mindset's wrong. It's how do you give with what you have, not Because talk about the richest people in the world, and they're empty. They just want more, and it's you can have it all, and what's the point? It's stupid. So.
Yeah, if you lose everything else to get that, then it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
If you go back to day one in your business journey, like when you and your brother looked at each other and said, let's do this, what is one thing you would do differently?
I wish I had been more open to doing the things like figuring out my costs, figuring out my process better. And even now, like I'm more averse to debt, but we're just more a cash operating business. We don't like to have debt, but being more aware of buying the right tools from the get-go, not being like, oh yeah, we'll just suffer for as long as possible so that you're kind of building into your employees. We were big on getting trainings and all those things, but we were definitely more, I would say, fearful of spending money on the right equipment, the right lifters.
You were more fearful?
We were,
okay, yeah.
when we started, then became pretty clear that that had to be what we did. Now we're not afraid. But from the get-go, I think I wish I had been more...
I hear that a lot. What is it that makes us do that in the early days? Like, what is the mental hurdle we have to overcome?
Every year you have the same hurdle. It's the same hurdle. It's, are we gonna be busy? Do we have the sales to support the purchases that we have made or are going to make? That's the question. I don't have a specific answer to that other than that do what you do and do it well, you'll always have work. Whether it's gonna pay all those bills, it's a fine line, but you gotta be smart about it. You can't be going out and buying three brand new dump trucks if you're not in trucking. Like you gotta make smart decisions.
Yeah.
But I think the more credible and the more driven the business is to do what you do and do it well, the more you obviously gather those developments. The other thing that I would say is one thing I wish I had done is advertise. We have never advertised until this year. We're kind of starting a little bit. It's always been word of mouth and this theory of like, oh, well, we just get work off of the last job. And that theory has gotten us to where we are, but it's really kind of a shallow-minded thought process. You want to be front of people's mind. Even if you're not really getting work out of it, you want to be present. That's something that I never really took into account. My social media presence, my Google presence, my internet presence was never really something I ever thought about or cared about, and I regret that. So I think if I were to do it all over again, I would put more, even if it's not something I'm comfortable in or know anything about, I should find the right person and invest in it because it's...
And the good news is it's getting easier and easier as time goes on. Like it's easier than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
You know, there's things you can do without spending $1 in this front. Like just having a really well filled out Google listing with Google reviews and photos of your work, like good photos, not photos as you're wrapping up the hydro seeder hose and everything's still kind of all construction. You know what I mean? Like good photos. Like that stuff doesn't cost anything but time and discipline. But you can do a lot in that regard of starting early because like time matters a lot. You know.
Yeah, layout of history.
Exactly.
So I'd say that's probably something I would do differently.
Sure. And to your point about like the fear of can I afford investing into this equipment or buying this thing to make my life easier, hopefully. One of the things that I've found really helps contractors is, you may have even done this yourself, like in the budgeting tool, just copy your budget and start like just scenarioing out like what would happen if I bought this? What would happen if we did hire an office admin? What would happen if we did spend this much money on marketing? And you can just kind of see what it does to your pricing. And then you can be like, yeah, I think we can pull that off. Sure, we can charge $6 more per man hour, but put it in your budget, start selling the work, and if you can sell at that price, and if you can sell the work at that price, there's your permission.
The plan, right.
There's your permission to go spend the money because you've just proven that the market will
hold it.
Yeah, exactly. And so much. It is true, like price does matter. It's not a non-thing, but like so much of the time, we blame things like price because it's the easiest thing to blame when really the core issue is something deeper.
One thing I'll say about that price being the issue, we just recently found out we lost a project that I really wanted to get. And we were off by a pretty big chunk of money.
You mean the next...
Yeah, the next other bidder. I don't know, supposedly apples to apples, I've heard it all, but whatever.
Yeah, sure. It rarely is.
But one thing that I thought was interesting is, I'm not mad. I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Because if they're able to do it so much cheaper, they clearly have less overhead. They clearly have less whatever. I'm not wondering, oh, did I bid it wrong? No, I know I bid it right.
You have
a good feeling. It's a good feeling to know. Yeah, no, I know what the numbers hold. And even if I manipulate my profit margin lower than I want to be, I'm still not close. I'm not like I'm
so you go
$3 grand off.
If you would go type that number in, it's like I'd lose 20%.
I'm not interested in that. And it's great to be just like, no, I appreciate the opportunity. This is my price. I appreciate the opportunity. If anything changes, let me know.
Yeah.
And they're just like confident, and it's a good feeling. a good, peace of mind, because there haven't been many years where I've missed projects and I'm like, oh, did I bid it? You don't know. I'm like, no, I'm confident, and that's a great feeling. Yeah, of course you want to sell work, but
not if it robs.
No, but I'm glad. Like I said, it's the best projects are the ones you don't get often. Like, you don't want to get it just to do work. You'd rather, like you said, if you don't make money, there's no reason to do the work. Keep it breaking even. There is a gray area there if you need work.
Yeah.
But you know what your break even is then. If you're just doing it for just revenue.
That's key. Knowing what your break even is. See, that's what so few people actually know. It's like just knowing what your break even is on that big job you just lost is key.
Right. And even if I brought it to that number, which for the fun of it, sort of like the budget idea, playing with it.
Yeah.
Like, man, I wonder if I did it actually at cost. I'm still not even, I'm close, but I'm not at that same guy's number. It's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
But even there, you're like, no, I'm clearly though.
And you can just let it rest.
Kind of what you talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just because I have a labor rate and a material and all the things, doesn't mean my price is even going to be remotely close to yours, even if it takes the same amount of time to do it. Because I have different overhead, I have different equipment, I have different whatever to accomplish the goal that you may not have. And that has a cost and an overage.
It does.
Figured into it.
And you know what's interesting is I've seen this a couple times, sometimes, I hear like, I don't want to get all this nice expensive equipment like tilt rotators and whatnot because of how expensive it is and how much it'll jack my rates up and all of that. But what I've seen time and time again is those companies are set up that way with really good equipment that are really productive. They are so productive that even though their man-hour price might be 50% more than their competitions, their overall end job price is actually the same or sometimes even less.
That's a very interesting comment because we bought the steel wrist on our Kubota excavator 3 years ago. Exactly that. What we can do with that and 2 guys versus 3 or 4 guys, our actual overall cost is about the same as somebody that's doing it.
It makes up for it in opportunity costs.
Right. And it's incredible.
Yeah.
Especially in what we were talking about, those boulder walls.
Yeah.
Machine set walls. You can fully articulate.
So there you go. You could go do a $40,000 traditional SRW retaining wall or that in
the same just about time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it looks awesome too.
Plus you can lay super quick.
Right.
So with that, you just move right down the wall, boop, 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 alone.
Yeah. Right. One, two-man crew.
No spotter, no anybody. You just boop, 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 right down the line.
What is one thing you would say makes your company and your team unique?
Luke and I being in business as brothers is not specifically unique, but being as brothers, we have obviously both raised in a Christian home, raised to honor the Lord in our business and in our lives. I would say our doing everything as unto the Lord and having integrity in what we do has definitely something I would say that sets us apart. And of course, this year we've had a few of them where you're literally not making money. You bid it wrong or you just under anticipated time or whatever. But no, we're going to do what it takes to make it right because at the end of the day, our name is on the business and it's what makes it to do it as unto the Lord. So I would say that's one specific thing that makes us unique to others. And then another, which I guess is unique, I've heard last week says, you guys sod all your jobs when you're done. And the reason for that is I don't want to babysit or have to have people babysit grass seed. So when you're done, your yard is sodded along our work.
Cool.
So that's something unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out your
lighter note.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to check out your wrap-up job photos now on your Instagram that you're starting on.
Yeah, we got some. It's not great, but we got some.
Well, hey, thanks a million, man. Like, I appreciate you guys and the way you guys have supported us at SynkedUP. Really, like since the early days.
It's actually funny talking about supporting you. So, a local landscape company that does a lot of our planting work. I was talking to Don and I was like, hey, so you guys need to get synced up. So he saw one of our proposals and I was like, yeah, no, you need it. Because if you don't have no idea if you're making money or not. And then I went to his office, pulled up my laptop, and just showed him a quick, made an estimate, a fake estimate, and showed him. And he goes, "It shows you all those things like every time." I'm like, yeah, you just got to make sure your budgets, you put all your equipment in, your employees, whatever. It's really with not much effort, you can whip up something that's close without really that much effort. And then when you put the effort in, man, does it get better. So then they got it last year, and we had them do plantings on a pretty big job for us this year. And it was funny getting a proposal from him through the way that and I was like, oh, I like this. It's a very unique system. It's weird getting a proposal from somebody using the same system I use.
Yeah.
It was just kind of cool.
That is super cool.
And being able to toggle, because everyone always asks I hit approve, but it doesn't work. Obviously, you have to click the approve all work areas thing.
Yeah.
And that even threw me off a little. I did the same thing.
Did you?
I'm like, why is this not working? I was like, oh yeah, the thing I tell people to do, I got to do.
Wow.
Kind of funny.
Always fighting against confusion. That's a never-ending game.
But it was cool getting a proposal from somebody
that
in
is
the same
cool.
system. Yeah.
That's kind of neat. Like two.
I haven't had it before.
Yeah,
it was just kind of funny to receive one from the same, because not many people, which for everybody listening, get it, because it's incredible.
Well,
it's worth whatever the cost. It doesn't matter.
I just want to say thanks, because like, you know, as a contractor, like your business is kind of your baby. Like you pour everything into it, and like the idea of spending money and then hoping that it produces a return on your investment, like that takes a lot of faith and trust and credibility, and we don't take that lightly when you give that to us, and we want to make that, you know, our vision, our goal is to just wipe out, you know, contractors working hard but not making anything, and we're nothing but a worn out body and no money at the end of their career.
Yeah, and I think you think about the one thing that even in your little feedback pieces of your, which I don't watch all the YouTube videos or the weekly updates, but occasionally I'll see something that intrigues me, is how you bid, which even me, like, oh, it's going to take me 8 man hours. Well, is it? You have to bid in increments of 8 or 10. You can't be in this gray area half day thing, because what happens is, oh, it's going to take however many hours. It's like, well, how does that work into like days?
That's right.
We've realized that on this, we just finished a pretty good sized retaining wall job, and that specifically was our issue. Oh, it's going to take however many days, but you're not figuring in your travel time, you're figuring in, but not really well. And then half days really screw you up.
They do. Because you got to recover that overhead.
Yeah, and if you have days where you anticipate weather delay or whatever, you got to plan for those. You can't just
when it rains, your insurance company doesn't say, we'll just not send you a bill this month. Right,
exactly. So you have to think about those things. Even having the system, even using it, there are weak links, probably in more so the user, not so much the system, the user, on having a plan and knowing what will go wrong or could go wrong and budgeting for it. Obviously, the markup kind of flexes a little bit of that, but not really. Then you're doing work for free. If you don't plan it properly.
And that's what we need to avoid.
Correct.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you very much, dude. I appreciate it.
Thanks for letting us barge into your busy day before you head out.
Yeah, man, no problem.
And it's good to see you in person.
Happy to do it. Yeah, so, thank you very much.
You betcha. Cheers.
Cool.